Okay, so change management. A change is any change made to a production environment, and the change management process is what handles the life cycle of the change. And the aim of change management is to ensure that we have a standardized method and procedure used for handling the changes from when they're created to when they're completed. And the reason we do this is to minimize risk and any disruption to other services. And I like to come back to this slide because a lot of people have been struggling with the path. So I like to go back over and talk about incident, problem, and change. And just using a scenario. So incident, you've had a user report, a work stoppage, and then you've had multiple people calling in with the same issue. You didn't know what the root cause was, so you opened up a problem record to identify the root cause. You identified the root cause in problem management, and then to resolve that problem, you need to create a change request and a change to a production environment to resolve that problem. Or you can just create a change request for normal things that are happening that need to be updated or pushed out directly. So just to kind of drive home the point and the connections between the processes. So there's some similarities with what's new for change to a problem. Change requests that have been previously entered into Remedy are going to be entered and worked in ServiceNow. Any production changes, currently your PCR issues, are going to be requested and approved in ServiceNow change requests. There can be multiple tasks on a change request, just like there is with problem. If you have tasks that need to be done, you have the option to do that from the form. Any UIT testing approval for bugs and enhancements, I know this is applicable for most of the people on the phone, that's going to remain within JIRA. Any work instructions that are needed to implement the change should all be recorded in the change request form directly. And all the changes are going to be given a risk impact level rating. And the way that that's calculated is by the way you answer 5 questions that are built within the form. And then change requests are going to be approved by a person designated for the affected CIs that's chosen for the change request, but also that risk impact level. And there's a new role, which is the assessor, that's the assignment group manager. They're going to be authorizing changes before the business owner, and we'll talk about that again here in a second. So the process owner for change is Larry Dillard, and the change managers are Chris Linden and Tweelin Nguyen. And you'll notice that Tweelin and Chris are also the problem management group, and so these are roles, they're not certain people doing all these. There's many different hats that people wear across all of the processes, not just problem and change. In addition to handling the day-to-day execution of the change process, the change managers are going to be authorizing change requests. They're going to be convening and chairing the CAB meetings, conducting post-implementation reviews, which we're going to be referring to as PIRs, and also authorizing change templates, which we'll get to shortly. And they're also going to be watching over the processing, if it's working for everyone, how people are following it, and escalating those issues up to the process owner who can make adjustments and is overall making sure that the consistent process is being followed. There's the change owner. This is the assigned to on the change, and they're responsible for the creation and responsible for the change request from creation to closure. And they're also responsible for providing CAB representation at the meetings. If you do need tasks put within the change request, there could be multiple implementers for all of those, and these are the people that are actually pushing through the change. And the assessor is the new role that we mentioned in the previous slide. This is the assignment group manager. And the reason that it's called the assessor is because they're assessing the overall information that's captured on the change request information. They have the technical expertise to be able to provide the assessment. They make sure that all the information in there is accurate. The risk impact rating is accurate. The CI selected the dates, and making sure all of that information is proper. And once they've authorized the change, then it goes through, and the change approvers are going to go through and approve the change request and determining the readiness for implementation. And the CAB, which everyone should be familiar with now, they assist the change managers with approvals, implementation scheduling, the PIRs, which again are the post-implementation reviews, and approving change templates. And we now have the ECAB, which is the subset of the CAB, and these are people that, if there's an emergency change request that's put through, they're providing advice to the change managers in regards to that emergency change request. Any questions on the roles? Remember, you can unmute at any time.
Sorry, I had a question. Are the hospitals going to follow the same type of procedures and have the same type of, structure that you mentioned before?
No, they have their own, and I know Larry's on the phone, but did you want to jump in, Larry, with this one? The hospital has their own CAB meetings, but we are, I know, working to try to have some things similar. Like Chris Linden, I know, has joined I think he joined their CAB meeting last week to see how they do it, since they're already on ServiceNow. So maybe there are some similarities that we can structure the same, but in general, they're still going to be functioning separately.
Still separate. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have, you'll see it in the demo that Rachel will give pretty soon, but you'll see that we have places to identify if the change affects the school, the hospital, either one of the hospitals. And then we'll report on those and give those out to the business representative for the hospitals.
Okay.
So there's 5 different types of changes. There's a normal and an expedited change. And the only difference between these 2 change requests are the lead time. So with the normal change, you've put through, it's got a defined lead time for testing and validation. And with the expedited change, it's the same thing, except for the lead time is shorter. And we'll get to what the lead times are in a few more slides. And then there's an emergency change. An emergency change is used to restore service or fix a P1 incident immediately. So there could be some outage, and the work needs to be done immediately in order to restore the service, and that is an emergency change. And unlike normal and expedited changes, when you're doing the paperwork ahead of time, with an emergency change, you're focused on restoring that service. And then afterwards, you're going back and you're doing all the documentation. And some people ask what the difference between an emergency change is and expedited. So think about emergency, we can't wait for the paperwork, it needs to be done now. And an expedited change is we can wait till midnight tonight. And then we have standard changes. So if you have some low risk changes that you put through, a couple times a week, very frequently, you don't necessarily want to go through all of the normal paperwork that you would for a normal change. So you have the option to create a standard change template, and the template you can customize to put all of the information that you don't want to retype all the time, and you can put that information in and then send it off to get approved. And the change managers are going to be reviewing these. They're going to be getting in touch with any of the change approvers that are related to that CI, and they're going to look at it, review it, and then they're going to pre-approve that template. So actually they'll approve the template, and then these are going to be considered pre-approved. So you'll be able to access this template from a template library, which Rachel will get into after it's been approved, and you can use it as well as the people that are in your group. And you can go and use that template and submit the change, and then this will put it on the calendar for scheduling, and it doesn't need to go through the normal approval process like it would with the normal or expedited change. Then there's informational changes, and this is really going to be used at CAB. This is when there is no impact to the Stanford production environment. And this is really the change managers that are going to be using this. You won't be able to create them, but it might be Blue Jeans is pushing out this update, and it's just really used as an FYI for the CAB members. Any other questions about those changes? So we mentioned the lead times. If you have a very high or a high risk change that you're pushing through, there's some defined lead times. And the way that risk impact rating is generated is by answering a list of 5 questions, which you'll see on the form. And these are questions that really relate to what is the scope and the complexity of this change? What's the potential impact to users? How visible is it? Is it difficult to back out? What's your experience with this type of change? And based on how you answer those questions, the risk impact rating will generate. And if it's a very high risk impact rating, the normal lead time is 10 business days. Anything shorter than that will bump it up to an expedited change. And I forgot to mention when we talked about the change, different types of change requests, if you were to go through and for a very high risk impact rating, you didn't allow the 10 business days for the lead time, the system is automatically going to change it to an expedited change. You can't actually go in and select an expedited change. And if you're constantly not allowing the proper lead times, and there's several expedited changes that are going to go through, the change management group will probably look at that and just ask you why this is a recurring pattern to make sure that it's not just poor planning on the end of the people that are submitting the change request. So for very high, it's 5 business days, and the 1s and the 2s are automatically going to be reviewed at CAB. And then you can see for the lower risk impact changes, the lead time is much shorter. So getting into the workflow of the process for change management, for normal expedited changes, these are the steps. You raise and record, assess and evaluate, authorize and schedule, implement, and then review and close. So somehow something's triggering the need for a change request. It could be something from an incident, a problem, or a request, or a Jira bug that comes through. And you're creating the change record in this step. So you're putting in all the necessary information, the impact, you're answering the 5 questions, you're putting the backout plan, and you're including all the different tasks, indicating who's doing what, selecting all the appropriate CIs. All of that's done in this step. And after you've created that change request, then it goes off for the assessment and evaluation. And this is where the assessor comes into play. They're reviewing and assessing all of the information in that change record. They're also making any updates if there's a different CI that needs to be added or the different dates. They're making sure that all of that information is correct and ensuring all the tasks are there and all the appropriate information is included. And then it goes off to be authorized and scheduled. This is now where the other approvers are coming into play. They're reviewing and authorizing the change, signing off on their approval, if there's any updates that need to be made, and then finally it goes into schedule. So this gets all these changes get put into a forward calendar schedule so that there's visibility by the CAB and the change managers to see what changes are happening. If something comes up that can, if there's a potential problem, they know what changes were previously pushed out. And so they have access through all that information through the calendar. And just to go through the approval workflow one more time, it goes from being requested and documented with the requester, and then it goes off to the assessor, the assignment group manager, and then the additional approvers that are based on the CI selected and also the risk impact rating. And if it's a very high, a 1, or a high 2 change request with the risk impact rating, then it goes off to CAB for approval. And after that, you can go through and actually implement the change. You're going to go and perform and verify all of those approved implementation tasks have been completed. And then if you need to back out the change request, this is a step that you would do it and execute the remediation plan that you've included in the record if necessary. And this final step is when you review and close out the change record and you put the appropriate closure codes and information in there. And this is also the step where the post-implementation review occurs. If you have an emergency change, it's automatically going to flag for PIR. This will be reviewed by the change managers and the CAB members. And also if you have a change request that is closed incomplete or unsuccessful, I believe it's terminology unsuccessful. I think
Yeah.
so. Then they're also going to be looking at that. And if you have a change request that has been completed successfully, they're going to pull about 5% of those normal transactions and audit those. So they want to make sure that information is being completed, just like with problem, that people are following the process. If you have an emergency change, the workflow is slightly different. You're not going to raise and record and do all of that first. First thing you're going to do is implement the change. And again, the emergency change is to restore service immediately. So you'll come back to all the paperwork after the fact. Ideally, during the implementation of the change, you've been in contact with the manager or director that's been involved throughout the emergency change, which you then indicate that person's name on the form. So you've implemented the change, then you've recorded it, and then it goes off to review and close. So it'll go to to the assessor for approval after you've documented it. And then again, you'll put on there the ECAB member. That is the person that you've been in contact with throughout the change. And then it'll automatically go into PIR for the change group to review. And with the standard pre-approved change, this is where you've gone through and you've requested the template to be used for these low-risk normal changes that you do on a reoccurring basis. And you go and you access that. So you raise and record, add additional information onto that template that you need for the change. You implement it, and then you notice there's no approval steps or assessment step here because that's already been done when the template was created or approved. And then it goes off and you review it and close out the change request.
Okay, now we're going to hop back over into the system. And we're going to walk through creating a normal change request first. So back over here in my application navigator, I'm going to go to my change application. This probably has the most modules and links underneath. This top part are for your change requests. This middle section is where you can check the change calendar and change schedules. And then this bottom section are for standard changes. So we're going to start here. Create new under change requests. And it's going to bring us to this, hopefully it just refreshed. Okay, it's going to bring us to this interceptor page. And this shows me the different types of change requests that I can make from this page. Right now, you see emergency change request on this page, but come December, this won't be here anymore. The only way you'll be able to make an emergency change request will be from a P1 incident. So this won't be here come December. All right, clicking on normal change. It opened up a brand new change request record. Here's my change number. I'm the requester. And then we can go ahead and choose the affected CI. So I'm going to go over and choose Oracle purchasing card. Now you'll notice that most of these fields are read-only at this point. That's because they're going to be populated once I start filling in values in these tabs down here. And you'll have to fill out just about every field that you see on this form in order to submit. This CAP supported checkbox, you're not going to be able to check this, only change managers will, and this just indicates that they may have reviewed this change request already in a CAB meeting. And then again, it's already labeled it as normal. I don't have a risk impact rating yet. It's in a state of draft. And then you'll see the rest of these changes as we go through this. So assignment group. So this is important. You'll want to, as the requester, as the change owner, you'll want to go ahead and assign it to your group and to yourself. Because if you assign this to another group, as soon as you submit this, it's going to be in this other group's queue as their change request, and you won't be able to edit anything on that form from that point on. If you give it to another group, they're going to own that change. So just as good practice, if you're the change owner, if you're the one requesting the change, go ahead and put your assignment group and you as the assigned to.
And Rachel, how are you getting that information? When I click into the assignment group, there's no list that populates.
So
or if I went into, some of the other fields don't populate either,
Sure, I'm going to go ahead and click or blank out these fields. So when I go to this lookup list and I pop that open, I can find my assignment group here. Some assignment groups haven't been loaded into this list just yet, but most of you should be able to get into UIT training, which is here. Are you able to, do you have an assignment group that you know that you're a part of, that you see on this list?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if you go ahead and choose your assignment group and before even filling out your name, so I'm choosing my assignment group. Before even filling out assigned to, I'm going to go to this magnifying glass here, and this pulls up the list of people in that assignment group, which this isn't even up to date for my group, but this lookup list, this option is, it doesn't work if you already have something entered in here. You can't enter in your name and then look that up. You have to blank this out first.
Okay. And then the other, when it shows recent selections, that's because you had a recent. Okay.
Yeah,
I see now.
Already,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So just remember to, as the change owner, the person requesting the change, go ahead and put your assignment group and you're assigned to and assign it to yourself, because you will, especially when you get to the exercises, you won't be able to work on that form if you send it to another group that you're not part of. Okay, and then I think Elizabeth is your name, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah, you asked the question about the hospitals. So this is the section where you would indicate if there's other organizations that are impacted. And if you click on this lockbox and then click on this lookup list field, it pulls up the hospital organizations that you can select. If you do add that, if you do add a hospital to this impacted orgs list, then it will have to go through their own change process and through their CAB. So for the sake of demonstration, we're just going to leave them off of this for now. Okay, short description. Similar to problem, this is where you would give a brief description of the change. And the larger description box where you give additional information. Okay, making my way down to this Notes tab. I'm going to go ahead and enter in internal work notes. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save my form. And I want you to watch what happens up here once I click Save. So I'm going to go to Save. So it gives me a few more buttons. I can cancel at this point. I can copy this change. Copying a change is helpful if you have everything filled out, or a change request already went through and you want to use the same information from a previous change request. This is where you can do that. And then my request approval button appears. But at this point, I don't want to be able to request approval. And if I did try to, I'm going to go ahead and go through and click this request approval. It lets me know that there's plenty of mandatory fields that I've not filled in yet. So now that I've done that, it changed my state to assessment. It went from draft to assessment because the system thinks my intent is to go ahead and submit this form as soon as I've filled everything in. Just to be safe, I want to stay in draft state. So what I'm going to do is go over to this icon, this refresh icon, and I'm going to click that, and it's going to revert it to draft again. So back down here, I'm going to continue filling out these tabs. This activity section will populate with the work notes. information, but unlike problem, it's not going to capture different email communications within the activities. My planning tab, this is where you would go ahead and document steps to make change. The risk and impact analysis, enter any potential risks. The backup plan, steps to revert change, and any testing for the test plan. Okay, I'm going to go to schedule. The only required fields in this schedule tab is the plan start date and the plan end date. And you would have to indicate when you plan to start this change. So I'm going to go ahead and choose September 12th for the start, and we'll do September 13th for the end. This priority option, this is just for planning purposes for the change managers, just to let them know that this is based on what you indicate, that this is a priority change for you. Not required. And then the requested by date, again, not required. This is just the drop dead date. You need this change absolutely done by the date that you indicate here. Okay, moving on to the risk assessment. This is the area where it has the 5 questions that you need to answer that Vesna pointed out. And what you enter in here will calculate your risk and impact rating up here. It'll also affect the type of normal change that you've entered. So it'll either be normal or expedited, depending on your lead time and your risk impact rating. So one by one, I'm going to answer these 5 questions. So outage scope and complexity, location and number of users impacted, the business impact of the change. I'm going to make these a little bit lower risk. Okay, low visibility, back out prior to change, and then experience with this type of change. All right, so I've answered those 5 questions, and I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Okay, coming back up here, now it's given me the risk impact rating, and it's a low risk impact because I've entered in low risk impact values down here. It stayed at normal. It would be expedited if it didn't meet the correct lead time and it was more of a high risk change. And we'll get down to conflicts. First, we're going to go to the conflicts tab. Once you enter in your plan start date and plan end date, you'll be able to run this check conflicts. If you don't enter that in yet, then you won't see this button. But since I've entered it in and I've saved it, I'm going to go ahead and run my conflicts check. So I click that button, and it's running this, and now it's updated my conflict status up here. It let me know that there is conflict, and when it last ran that check, and I can go down to the bottom of this page and I can see the different conflicts with this change request. Now, these aren't blockers. This isn't going to stop you from being able to request approval for this change. This is just letting you know for planning purposes the types of conflicts that are happening during this scheduled change request. So there's different types of conflicts. There's changes affecting the exact same CI, changes affecting a different CI during the same period of time, a change made outside of the maintenance window, and then a change made in a blackout window. So we already have a couple of those. It indicates that this change is not in the maintenance window, or this change, the CI already scheduled it during the same time. So again, this is letting you know for planning purposes that these conflicts are on the change calendar, but it's not going to stop you from requesting approval. Okay, closure information when you're ready to actually close the change, and we're not just yet. And you can also at any point go down and create change tasks. And these tasks would be to actually implement the change. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new change task. Similar to problem, it brings over much of the parent change record information. We'll go ahead and assign it to Blue Jeans. We'll say that they have a task to complete for this change. And it's in a state of open right now. And then we can give it to an assignment group. You can give it to any assignment group. Give it to myself. And then the name of the change request, or name of the change task, I mean. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save and exit. And I'm back on my change request. And anytime you come back to the page, it automatically runs that conflict check. So back down here, my change request, or my change task that I just created. And I'm going to go back up here. And now with all of these tabs filled in, I believe I'm ready to request approval. So it's going to go to that first state in the workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and request approval. And now it's in a state of assessment, and the approval is requested. And what you do at this point is you go down to your Approvers tab in the Related Links section, and you can see who the approver is and who has this request at this point. So it's my assignment group manager, James Knox, who is the assessor, and it'll be his responsibility now to approve or reject this change. So what I'm going to do now for just for demonstration is go in and impersonate Jim so I can go ahead and approve and show you the whole approval workflow. You guys aren't going to be able to impersonate anybody. This is just for demonstration. So I'm going to go to impersonate user, and I'll go in as Jim Knox. And if you're a manager or if you're an approver, if you approve change requests, this is something that you'll want to follow along with. Over here on the left-hand side in the application navigator, you can look for your approvals. And I'm going to look specifically for my change approvals. And this will pull up my queue of change approvals. So there's only the one that I sent over. Now I can do a couple of things. I can open up this change request form, and I can view this, and it's still loading up. I can add notes directly to the change request form. I can go down to the very bottom under the Approvers tab, and I can actually approve or reject from here. I can click on this checkbox and quickly approve for any of these options. Or I can click on this I, this encircled I, and open up an approval form. And this is probably the best practice. And this is where I can enter comments and also approve and reject. So the approval form is probably the best practice when it comes to approving or rejecting a change request into an approver. Okay, and then last, I'm going to go back out here, back to my approvals queue. And I can do that same thing. I can approve or reject from here by using the checkbox or going within the approvals approval form. All right. So the way that I'm going to do this right now is I'm going to go back to my Approvers tab at the very bottom of the form, and I'm going to approve from here. So opening up the approval form, and I'm going to approve. Actually, I'm going to do it this way so it'll be a little bit easier for me to show the next step. Sorry, I'm back and forth. Okay. I'm going to do it this way. That way I can show you the change state right away. Approve. Okay. So this is the state that I wanted to show you. It changed from approved to requested. It's now moved on to the next approver in the workflow, and that is the CI approver. The CI approver. So if I come back up here, it shows it's now in a state of submitted. So me being the requester, it's now in the third state of the approval workflow. I should also point out, I forgot to mention earlier, because this isn't a risk impact rating. Actually, that doesn't affect PIR, does it? The 1 or 2? Okay, we'll talk about that later. The 1 or 2. Okay, so now it's in this approver's workflow, and I'm going to have to copy his name. Her name? I'm sorry.
She goes by her name.
Okay, and I'm going to go in and impersonate this person. Uma. Okay. And I'm going to go to her approvals. My change approvals. So there's a couple of them. It would be this one. And it's the same thing. You can open up the approval form. You can open up the change request itself and approve from here. Or you can approve directly from that queue that we had open. But I'm going to go ahead and approve from down here. And watch the state change. Okay, approved, approved. You may see in some cases that there's multiple approvers, and if that's the case, you don't need all of those people to approve. It's just one approver is required for that state. So in this case, we only had Uma as the approver, and we only had Jim as the approver. So now that they've both approved, it's in a state of scheduled. So that change is now scheduled. If this were a risk impact rating of 1 or 2, it would need to go to one more step of approval, and that would be that CAB has to approve it. Okay, I'm going to go back now to myself. And I'll go back to my changes. Assigned to me. 817. Okay, this is the change that I just submitted and went through the approval process, and now it's scheduled. I'm going to open that back up. So the next step would be to actually implement the change, and I can, it will either be implemented on this planned start date, or I can go in and click begin work. And once I do that, the system is going to change the schedule, actual start, it will enter that. And once I close the change, it'll enter an actual end date and time. And it's changed the state to work in progress at this point as well. So when I'm ready to close this change, and I can still at any point go in here and change the state of these tasks, and which is something that I want to do. I want to close this task out before I close the change, or it won't let me close the change. I'll go in here and I'll change the state of this task from open to close successful. Save and exit. And once a change is scheduled, you can't add any more tasks. Okay, so it's closed successful. Now that that's closed, I can close this change when it's when the change is done. So I'm going to go to close, and it's going to tell me, I already know, to enter my work notes or my closure information. So back down here, this is the tab that we didn't fill out earlier. Enter your close code and your close notes. If you enter closed unsuccessful, it's going to send this to PIR. We'll go ahead and enter closed successful. Any other notes? And we'll we'll go to close. And now it's in a state of closed successful. And there's no PIR required because it was closed successfully. So that's the normal change request process from creation to closure. Any questions about that? When you guys get in and do the exercises, you will be creating a normal change request, but you won't be going through and the whole approval process like I demoed.
I want to go through the delegation.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I do want to show one more thing. Before I go to delegation, I want to show you how you can create a change from a problem record. So I'm actually going to go back into my problem application, and I'm going to go to an open problem record. And I'll go to assign to me. Okay. So when I'm filling out a problem record, once I fill out the majority of the form and I save it, I can go up here and right-click this menu bar right here, and it gives me the option to create a change. And once I do create a change, it'll flash up on the screen really quick. A change request number will appear in this change request. It'll assign one, and then it's going to bring me to this change request form that I just created. So this is the change that I just created, and it should show that problem record down here that it's tied to. So that's how you create a change request from a problem record. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you before I jump into emergency and standard change is how to create a delegate. So if you're an approver and you want to delegate approval responsibility to others, you can go to this filter navigator and you can type in delegate or start to type it in, and it pops up under self-service. Pull up a delegate record, and then you can go ahead and name your delegate and their start and end time, and then their different permissions. And when you do give someone delegate permissions, then they have delegate permissions across ServiceNow. It's not just for problem or change, so they'll be able to have these certain permissions across the different applications. And you can go back. If I click this back button, it would show my list of delegates, and I can manage my list from within this delegates section, but I don't have any delegates, so I can't really show you that example. Okay, I'm going to go back over here to question. Did someone say Larry? Well, if you do have a question, feel free to speak up again, unmute yourself, or drop the question into the chat stream. Okay, back over here, I'm going to show you emergency change requests. So the difference with this workflow, if you guys can remember, we'll start with going to create new. Brings me to this interceptor page, and I'm going to go ahead and click on emergency. So as Vesna mentioned earlier, the difference with this workflow is that the work has already been implemented. The change has already been implemented, and this is going back and documenting that change request. So here are the key differences on the form. You'll see that there's PIR is required. We usually ask our class if they remember what PIR stands for. But I'm not sure if anyone is going to if anyone is going to speak up and answer. Does anybody remember? You can drop it in the chat stream if you want what PIR stands for. No, nothing? Okay, well, it stands for post-implementation review. And in case you forget, you can hover over it and it tells you. So PIR is required for emergency change requests. there's this new field, ECAB Reviewer, which is the director that you were most likely in communications with when you were making this emergency change. And then you'll also have to fill out the closure information before you can submit the change request, because the change should already be open and closed after the work's already done. So those are the big differences with an emergency change request form. All right. Any questions? Okay, the last thing that I'm going to demo is over here, a standard change. So a standard change, the big difference with a standard change is that it's already pre-approved. So you can request a standard change template, and that will have all the information that you've already customized into that form, and it will have already been approved by the change managers. And then once you start using that template, then it'll just go through, it'll go from draft to scheduled. It won't need to go through all the approvers in between. So to start with just a standard change template, requesting one of those, you would start by going to your standard change catalog right here. And you'll see this page will be populated with more categories as we build this out. But right now there's just one in this specific environment, just as an example. And we'll come back to that. But we'll start with the template management, which is where you'll need to go to propose a new standard change template, or to modify an existing one, or to retire a template. So I'm going to go into propose a new standard change template. And then you would fill out this form. The top half of this form is basically your reason for needing the standard change template. So you would basically sell that reason on here. And if you don't know what all is supposed to go in these fields, if you click this arrow, it'll give you more information on what exactly is expected in these fields. See a typo. Circumstances. And then the bottom half of this form is where you would customize your template. So you would enter in the values that you already want pre-populated. And you don't have to use all of these. You can delete these. You can go ahead and indicate your risk impact values. So this would just make it easier. These are for low impact changes that have already been through the approval process from 3 to 5 times with no deviation. And this would just be something that would go from draft to scheduled, a change that would go from draft to scheduled right away. So once this template is approved, hopefully approved, you would be able to access the template from this catalog. So I'm going to go back to my standard change catalog. And my template would be nested under one of these categories when there's more categories than what you see on the screen. So for now, we're going to go over to this category, and this is just a template that's built out as an example. And everything that I've already chosen to pre-populate when I built this template will be read-only. And then it'll go from a state of draft to scheduled once I submit this standard change. I think we can go ahead and move into the exercise challenge lab questions.